Okay, let's get started. Before I go to the technical part, so yesterday was the first time that I run the office hour for this quarter. Haven't done this kind of face-to-face office hour for a long time. But I think it's interesting that some of you were there. We have probably about 10 to 15 students overall. They basically stay there. I tried to put together a room with maybe 10, 12 chairs. We had to borrow chairs from the other room in order to make sure we have whatever. Basically, the room is packed. Everybody wear a mouth mask. And we group people into different topics. And then for part of that, I actually recorded. That's why the video you received, what I did was I was explaining the detail going through the code by break.c line by line. So I thought that's not just for those students, but also interesting to all of you. So I basically recorded that. That's you will see the video link I post called Office Hour by break.c. That's what it was about. So I think if you have any suggestion about how we should run this class, we're kind of going back to normal, but we still rely a lot on this kind of online technology to help us to reach out to everybody, because not all of us are in a condition to come to campus regularly. Some of us still need to be somewhat distant. So we try to do a little bit hybrid. So during this moment, if you have any suggestion, please let me know. I mean, for example, like yesterday's office hour. I mean, Thursday afternoon, it's impossible for me to have office hour with everybody. That's why I kind of feel that, oh, maybe we should do as much as recording, such that when I interact with one student or two students, those resources were available to everybody in this class. There is any other creative way we can make it better to serve you, please let me know or let the TA know. Okay, all right. So this is the topic I would like to talk about chapter 11. And I'd like to re-emphasize this, is that I'm not trying to teach you or lecture you every single detail in every single sentence in the textbook. Instead, we try to give you essentially minimum for you to be able to start doing some coding. And through that process, you will see what is the issue that particularly you struggling. And then we can bring it to discussion or office hour. Then we address those issues as we progress. Right? That's the hope I have. So therefore, I don't even recommend, even though we have a textbook, I don't even recommend you to read the textbook page to page, cover to cover. I'm actually thinking, as long as you can start doing some program, at least you will be able to get through the example, the small program, then I think you're okay to learn that way. I think this is different from, say, calculus or physics, those kind of courses. Programming is really very dynamic. So therefore, don't expect yourself to know everything. You just need to know the basic syntax, get through, and let the experience guide you through your learning process. That's just I think is the most effective way to learn, because okay, most of you are computer science major, I assume. That I remember when any student like myself, when we decide whether we want to be computer science major or physics major or mathematics major, and one of the things that differentiate us from those major are we will be learning until we die. Because computers just keep changing. There will be new things coming up. 40 years ago, whatever I learned is only a small part of that is applicable for the challenge that you will be dealing with after you finish here at UC Davis. So the thing is, in some sense, it's exciting if you optimistically look at the things, but in some sense, it's pretty passive. I would say pretty sad, because in calculus, you learn calculus, you basically, calculus, physics, the basic one, okay, the basic knowledge won't change, but computer, the concept just changes, all right? So that's the blessing or curse for what we're doing. Okay, so this is the topic I'm going to, I think this is the last topic I will cover in chapter 11, which is quite different as a programming concept. It's more like a language feature that you need to learn. So let me actually ask you this question. So far, I have been using the word class and object somewhat interchangeable. It looks like they're referring to the same thing. But in fact, there is still something different. I mean, in some sense, I said the class is the specification or commonality of the structure of those objects that you would like to create. So for example, you have a class student, then essentially I try to abstract that commonality among all the students that I'm interested and make them into attributes and member functions, and such that we can actually come up with that specification using C++ class, and then we can actually just dynamically create lots of objects. Okay, so that's kind of a difference. So you can think about class is a spec, and the object is the instantiation of that class. Okay, that's the difference. But if there is a difference between class and object, we're going to see some of the stuff that we can actually do with a class. So far, it looks like we're interacting with objects. But the first example I want to provide is that, well, can you actually track how many objects are being created under a particular class? So for example, I say I have a class box. How do you actually keep track of? Yeah, you want to say something? Yeah. Can you speak a little bit louder? Okay. Right. I mean, that's the correct answer. I appreciate that, because it is true. We have a static variable, and but yeah, that's actually Java's concept. In fact, Java inherited that from C++. Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, okay, assuming you don't know Java, what will you do if you want to count how many objects that's actually created for a particular class? Yes, please. Okay, so we have to go back, since we already, two students mentioned static variable, right? So what is static variable? What's the definition of static variable? Anybody remember from ecs36b or whatever equivalent? What is the difference between static variable, global variable, and local variable? Yes.
So local variables global variables exist everywhere. Static variables exist throughout all of the classes. It's one variable for one value for every single part of that. One of the objects.
Okay, that's good. So let me follow up. What's the difference between global variable and static variable? Because static variable is one copy, right? Global variable also one copy. Yes, please.
Static variables are local to the class, while global variables.
Right. So global variable, more specific, global variable is if you have a separate compilation, you have 1,000,005, then all that 1,000,005 will be able to access to that. But static variable is restricted by a scope. And only within that scope that you share that variable means that you re-entrance that particular scope. A scope typically is a function or a particular pair of curly bracket. Every time you access to that function, you're going to share exactly the same value. So it's actually has memory. Otherwise, local variable is a memoryless. Means that every time you go in, what's the previous value before you go in is already gone. But static variable is a memory form. So it will keep the memory. It's a stateful, so it will remember what's the previous access. Okay, so those are important concepts between static variable, local variable, and the global variable. Okay, those things are pretty fundamental. Regardless any language you use, you will have those two concepts. Okay, so in fact, we have a multiple way of keep tracking what is the keep tracking how many objects that you have created. You can use static variable like what C++ Java provide some of the issues. In fact, I will use the term called class associated static variable. I will explain what's the difference. On the other hand, you actually don't need to use static variable. You can still track how many objects are created. Let me actually just propose to all of you, based on what you know. I mean, some of you might know static variable. That's great. Some of you does not really know how to use static variable in a object-oriented language like C++ or Java. I still want to pose this to you, just without using static variable. Is that possible for you to track how many objects got created from a particular class? Yes, what is it?
I don't know if it's something there's like some weird pointer that's on static variables, but it also does that.
Yeah, static variable, definitely you can do that. I'm going to explain to you. That's the most common way. I'm not trying to ask you to think out of the box. To think, okay, people just say, if you want to count the object, use static variable. But there might be other way to do it. I just want you to start thinking outside of that given. Yes?
Can it be like every time the constructor is called, just like
Right. Every time the constructor track it. On the other hand, that tracking must be stored. That value must be stored somewhere, right? So I can actually, in fact, there are multiple ways to do that. I can actually track it with a global variable. Your global variable will not be gone. But the best way, in fact, to track that is actually using file. Let me actually tell you why file is important. We're assuming all the objects are transient. So transient object means that once you start running the program, you create 5,000 objects. And that 5,000 object will be there, so you count. You use some global variable to count how many objects. But when you Control C, you terminate the program, those 5,000 objects are gone. So that's called transient object, means the object were not persistent. But later you will see it's actually perfectly okay to make C++ persistent. Think about this way. Think about when you create a database for objects for all the students at UC Davis. And there are currently probably 100,000 of them totally. And the thing is that every day there will be new students added in. And you don't want to write a program which will be Control C and all the student record got wiped out, right? So you need to store the object, or at least its content, somewhere persistently in the file in the database in order to continue. So in some sense that there is an object outside of your memory that you need to keep tracking. And in fact, best way is actually where is persistently stored is where you should store that number as well. So conceptually, that this is something which the design of C++ never considered at the beginning. So we have to do some wiggling in order to get that to work. Okay. All right. So I just want to tell you that sometime the textbook or whatever professor, including me, myself, we're teaching you a particular way about doing certain things. But in my experience, it's always that innovation about something you didn't know, or you already know this is what other people are doing, but you try to think about in a different spirit. And sometimes you can come out with a really creative solution. Okay, as a programmer, I just want to tell you, that's why also I don't like you to read through page to page and believe that that is the rule you have to follow, okay? Even including my lecture will just give you a hint about some of the things we experience, but exactly how you're going to develop your own, you need to experience yourself, okay? And then be creative, be innovative, and then just don't be restricted, all right? All right, so now I'm going to tell you the C++ way. So in C++, I already associate the attribute with the class. Sorry, I shouldn't say associate. I actually declare attribute in the class, which means that every object I actually created will have a memory space to host those variables. So essentially, I have those three variables, length, width, and height. And essentially, if I create this many objects, then all of them are going to have the memory separate memory space for this three variables. I'll actually show you this slide. So essentially, we're looking at this picture. Okay, those three variables, into each of them, assuming it's double. So I don't know how many bytes you need to prepare for double, but in a typical 64-bit computer is 64-bit. So that's why each of this represent 64A by 24 bytes of memory. So when you create 1 million objects, that's actually 24 million bytes that you need to provide in order to host this object. Okay, so that's we call an attribute associated with the objects, because every single instance you create, you're going to pay for that. You're going to reserve, and everybody is going to just modify their own value, which is very natural. Okay, so the other concept is called class variable. So class variable, essentially, I'm actually not associated with any of the object, but I actually associate with a class. So, and also, no matter how many objects that you created, that one will still be there. So that blue dot on the top is a byte or whatever, integer or double, whatever you want to have. That one is just one copy. And it's a static variable because every piece of code, they share that variable. And therefore, that is a concept which you can actually associate an attribute only with the class and not with the object. I mean, while the application is I can do an object count, but object count is not the only thing you can do with that particular blue dot back there. Okay, so let me summarize what I said, is that you can actually declare some attribute that's actually associated with the class and not with the objects. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I just want to tell you a little bit history is in object-oriented, whatever technology development, there was a period of time, which is now none of the modern language have this. They actually think we need to model everything as object. So what do I mean model everything as object? That class is also an object. So in some terms, you can call classes what we call meta object. Sometimes people use the term. So everything is an object. And that has certain limitation about the language you can create, by the way. But essentially, what they are saying is if class is an object, then the class should, just like every other object, should have attribute. So that's why now you have attribute associated with class. So essentially, if I want to create 128 class, and then each of the class will form another 2 million objects, then those 20 class is actually an instantiation of a meta class that's describe the class object. So in some sense, if you saw some of the earlier programming language design, they have a concept called class object. It just let you know. So this is a little bit history about what's happening. But today, if you look at Java, you look at C++, they don't have this concept explicit anymore. Okay. However, the exception is that you can actually associate an attribute only to the class and not to the object. And one of the most useful, I would say, commonly used application is counting how many objects that you have. Okay, so how do I actually do that? Let me show you an example. Okay, before I move on, just any question about what I said conceptually? By the way, it might not make any sense until you see the next slide, okay? All right, so this is a way to specify. In the class definition, you can see that I still have length. Why is it breadth? I thought it was length, width, height. Okay, I copied the wrong slide or something. They use a different way of representing this. Okay, but anyway, I have those three things. And you can see I have a 3 red dot whenever you create multiple boxes. But that variable called object count. The blue dot is actually, I use the keyword static. So when I use the keyword static, that one has only one part. Means multiple entrants from all the instantiation you create, that variable is going to be unique. Okay, that is the way to declare attribute that associated with the class. You have a question? All right. So, okay, so now you understand how to define it. Let's see how you can use it. So this is the way we actually use it. I can, because object count, right? So in the constructor, you see that I actually add those 2 lines, plus object count. I define a variable and then I do that. That's great. Is everything okay? Yes. Where is that? Oh, size T is unsigned or unsigned long. Is okay. Sorry, it's confusing. This is like a C or C++ convention. Is that we create a lot of those terms. In fact, they are integer, but we use the word like size T. Say it's a size, but it's just unsigned long. Okay. Yes, please. Which this one?
Yeah, right above it.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is another way of doing what we call bracket initialization. So you look at what he's doing because I have a 3 variable, right? I mean, I can directly just set the local, but you see what they're doing? They're actually passing the box as an attribute. They want to basically doing the copy. So they use this box dot length, this box dot width, this box dot height, directly set it. But in this code, I believe that those 3 variables are public. So they can do that. If it's not public, you cannot directly access. Oh, it's a private. Oh, interesting. How can this work? I have to compile this code because it doesn't make sense. Because if this is a box, right? If this is a box, box is an object over here, and this is a different object. This is a different object, even though they're from the same class. And you can directly access. I have to write the code. Sorry, should I do that right now? What? No, I'm thinking because this is a screenshot. Okay, let's try to do that. It won't hurt to find out. Okay. Let me Control X, Control C. Yes. Can you see my screen? Let me make it a little bit bigger. Perfect. This should be, where did I put my program? Book. Try to see which one it was. Let me try ex1101. Let me try 08. No, 08 is not box. Let me see this one. No, this one doesn't have that, so it must be different. So I'm looking for, oh, I can use that one as well. Yeah, this, I'm just saying that that one doesn't have the CD0. Wait a minute, I want to go. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, I have the code here. And I just do this. Huh, I can do that. Okay, let's try to compile it and see how that works. Let me see. If I do G++ minus std is equal to C++ 14 ex1108.cpp. That work? Okay. I need to do truckload.cpp as well. Wait a minute. What other things do I need? Oh, apparently this one has a warning. Let me actually check what was the warning. Well, it might be intentional. It might be intentional. It's just give me warning. So it's actually still working, right? Yeah, it's still working. Okay, so it's actually running. So which means that I was wrong, that the code is actually indeed correct. That you can actually have, even though the variable is actually private, but apparently you can actually still doing that. That's actually new to me. I'm sorry. I have to say that. So thank you for your question. I think you're right that this is a. Let me actually just remove this one to see if this still compile. If I remove this one. Yeah, now it has an arrow. Let me see, what was the arrow? Okay, it's just I cannot do that. I have to pass as a reference. That's the C++ way of describing. That's a passing as an object as a reference. So this one I have to put an ampersand here. Okay. Okay, so I myself is puzzled because I kind of feel this language design defeat its purpose, because the strange is that, well, what happened if I do this? Let me try a different thing. This is the way when I deal with this, I'm actually see whether this is only work for constructor or actually work for something else. If I comment out this line and I do this one here, I say length is equal to box.length. What? No, it's the input argument is const, but this is so this lowercase box is an object, it's another box object. It's passed in as a variable to this object that's actually have the constructor. So essentially what this is doing, I'm actually copy the value. When I create a box, I copy the value from the other object. Yeah. So I'm going to do width is equal to box.width, because this is supposed to be the same, right? It's bracket initialization. So if this one also work, then I really don't know the encapsulation principle. What do I mean by private or public? Okay, so you can see that I'm actually not using the bracket initialization. I'm just using the regular assignment. They're supposed to work the same. I'm just wondering whether compiler will give me something different. Okay, it works as well. Wow. So it doesn't actually complain. That's actually interesting. Get rid of what? Which line? Should I go up? This here. Oh, get rid of const. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Still work. Still work. Yeah, that's why I'm worried that why I define this as a private, and let me actually do that. Let me change it. Okay. Let me do something even more aggressive. Okay, I just after I copy, I remove it. You want me to still allow me to do that? Yeah, that's why it concerns me. I mean, that's why when I think you asked me the question, I just, for sure, I thought that's have to be public, but apparently the language was so much changed. So sometimes, okay, we learned a lesson. I mean, computer programming never stops surprising me. Things like this is that don't listen to your instructor until you actually run the program yourself. Okay, and when you go out to work, don't believe what your colleagues said entirely. They're probably right, but sometimes it's good to check, because sometimes the system might change. Because I never wrote code like this to find something in private and then I can start with that. Sorry, but yes, sure. What? Oh, this is actually from the other piece of code, Okay, let me actually tell you that is a variable name. That small box, I actually should change this. This is kind of confusing. I will change this to just say B. Okay, if this is a B, then this one should be B. It's just a variable name. Okay, so essentially what I done, let me actually write a driver to run this program. Let's go to ex. This must be a driver. So let me see what it does. Okay, so you see here, I actually create a box called P box, right? And then there is load one get first box. Basically, this is also a box. I create an object, but then using this to set the P box. Okay, that's what it's doing. I mean, P box is a pointer. Basically, they're using the pointer notation, which I don't want to get into right now. I know some of you are very familiar with a pointer, but we will talk about pointer when we go through the virtual function. At that time, I cannot avoid, but at this moment, don't worry about pointer. Does that answer your question? Let me just go back box.h. That's the code. Okay. All right. Good. And now I have some something new to learn myself. That's good. Okay. All right. So since I'm on this code, I'm actually going to stop to talk about static variable. I think you understand the concept of static variable. By the way, if you have a static variable, let me finish this with this program. If you have a static variable, you will define it here. Static size t, and then say object count. And then over here, I will say, because I have a 3 variable, I'm going to do this. Object count plus plus. And object count, let me just copy and paste. You need to do add here, add here, add here. And then, oh, wait a minute. Why do I need this? I don't need this. I don't think I need this semicolon. And over here, of course, I need to add this. Okay, you see that I actually add those 3 things, and then that's it. All right. All right, that's good. Any question about the way I do static variable and object? You have a question? Yes. Okay. What is size? Oh, size t is just a type. Is called size t is a type, is equivalent to say unsigned integer, unsigned int, or unsigned long. It's just a convention. People use size t a lot. All right. Yes.
How do you access the private?
How do you access the private variable? Okay. In theory, I no longer know that because since I can access the private variable from outside. But in theory, only the member function within the same class can access that variable. But you should only be able to access variable yourself for that object. The case I showed is actually be able to access the private variable of other object. That is something which is, maybe there's a keyword saying that object is all the object can access that. I don't know. But anyway, here is this. The last thing I just want to tell, yes, please. Right.
Right. Well, I think that's a possibility, but in that case, they need to have a way to separate these two cases, like what variable I allow other object in the same class to access, what variable I do not want them to access. We need to have that language feature. Yeah, yes. You want to say something? Well, for the copy constructor, I mean, I can actually define, I can either make it private or I can actually make it some sort of, let me actually think about this. That's a good question. I actually want to do this differently. You see that I have another box here. I have a comparison. This is not a constructor, right? This is not a copy constructor. And I'm actually just thinking, well, can I actually access that variable here? I would say printf std. I would just print this percent. What is this? Oh, this is double. I would just print this, and then I would just say box.length. If what you're thinking is right, then this one shouldn't work, right? Because this is not under box constructor. And oh, this is box.length. Let me actually see whether this compiler will like it or not. No, this is because object count, but it's still, it seems to me it allowed me to do that. Let me get rid of the object count. Wait a minute, I already have object count here. Object count. Why is? Oh, I know, it's a different issue. I need to have another place which is actually define object count. So that is not the way to do the. Let me just get rid of this first. Don't want to complicate things. See, it still allows me to do that. Yeah, it's really surprised me, to be honest with you. Oh, not this program. You see that this one I'm actually in this function called compare, which box is a variable. It's not a copy constructor. It's a regular member function. And I will be able to just directly do this. I'd probably be able to just change this box.length is equal to 0. And it probably still allow me to do that. Yeah. Oh, one error. Oh, because it's const. I cannot change that. Okay. Yeah, because it's const. Okay. So it's not object-oriented principle protecting it. It's the const is protecting it. Okay, fine. I'm actually going to change this to. Okay, this is my last try. Okay, I think the language is broken. Okay, hopefully Java is better, right? But C++ is not necessarily. I don't have a lot of confidence right now. Let me actually try another thing. I want to try different version of compiler. See if any of the compiler also not like that. 2K. No, I did something wrong. I think it's not 2K, it's 2A or something. Yeah, still allow me to do that. How about 98? Okay, 98 is giving all kinds of trouble. Okay, so anyway, I think we have a lot of mystery here. We raise more issue than we actually learn. But if you think about that, you learn. At least you learn that
this is sometimes the concept might not be exactly supporting the implementation. I mean, I'm really surprised. I still need to dig more about why is this, okay? All right, so I'm gonna stop here for this topic. I only have 5 minutes, that's great. All right, so I'm gonna use the rest of 5 minutes to do something else. I know what I'm going to do. Originally I don't want to do this, but now I actually want to do that. Okay, now I'm gonna ask you another question. How do you actually access to the variable like object count before any object was created? I mean, I show you the example that you can only access object count within the class box, right? But I want to access to that variable before even any of the object got created. I want to check whether that value is actually 0. Or maybe somebody else already called it multiple times. I want to actually find out what that value is outside of that construction. I want to go somewhere else to do it. How do I actually do that? So, yes.
Get outside of the class and just connect it to the class.
Well, the thing is that it's just a syntax. In the syntax, if you see, did I have that? Okay, I have that. So the way to use that variable, let me actually just use a program to do that. Hold on 1 second. The way to do it is if I'm actually doing outside, if it's here somewhere, I want to access that variable, I will just say box, colon, object count. So you see that this, I'm outside of the class box. I'm in the main program. For me to access that static variable, all I need to do is just ask the class name. So that is box, colon. If you think about std cout, std is also a class name. So essentially, any variable that you add the class name with 2 columns, then that's actually give you the access to that. And that's the way to access that particular variable if you want to get it outside. And if it's a public, you can access this way. The example I show you, because it's not, so you actually have to provide another function for them to access. And that's why you have this situation. You can see that I actually create a function that I can set the object count to be 20. I can actually change the value, but if I make it, this is actually not a class associated static member, but it's a class associated member function for you to change that as well. Okay. Okay, so any question? I guess I originally think this will only take me 5 minutes to get through, so I can move on to chapter 12. I guess I have to start it next Monday. But I feel that this class, today's class, is very valuable, not just to you, but to me as well. All right, thank you, and you all have a good weekend.